Well, if we knew about this, the pilot, so our comment was, if we've got to take this thing off, we're sure going to have it loaded down with champagne. We're going to leave that for the Germans. But it didn't, it wasn't necessary.
I suppose that you were the infantry at times their best friend. They probably liked the idea of seeing you guys in the sky
Yeah,
as the infantry moved forward.
yeah. Well, you know, it we had knew we were going to get back. If we got back, we'd have a warm bed, a dry bed to sleep in, and the infantry was just going through an awful thing down there, particularly in the Bulge. Play Gap was bad too. We flew missions there when the Germans and the British had them in a pincer, and Patton was he was really ticked because Eisenhower or Bradley, somebody wouldn't let him close the gap with Montgomery, ready to shoot Montgomery. I don't know.
Yeah. A little bit of tension between those two.
Yeah, but I watched one of the pilots in our squadron got hit, his ship got hit, and he bailed out, and I saw him land in a hayfield down there, and he took his chute and stuck it underneath the haystack and took off to a hedgerow there, and thought, well, and there were Germans all around there. We knew the Americans were just a quarter mile up the road though from us, so we were close to them, and he knew the direction. So lo and behold, the next day they brought him back. The infantry brought him back to our base, and he had taken a German prisoner.
Oh, wow.
And he'd forgotten his 45, but he had his holster on, and he acted like he was the German was with a hedgerow with his rifle, and he just said Achtung, and the German threw his rifle down and out of his hand, so he picked that rifle up and brought the German back with him. Every time they'd come to an opening in the hedgerow, why, he'd send him across first.
Did you have any close calls yourself?
Not with the ground forces. No, what I had twice that I had lost my oil, and I didn't have to bail out. One of them, the direction finding officer, gave me a vector to a base in France that was just south of Paris, and they had just liberated Paris, and I didn't have anything but my flight suit, and I was afraid to go into town because I didn't have a Class A uniform. Can you imagine anybody as stupid as that? A week after it's liberated, I had some occupation money, and that was it. I waited 2 days for somebody to pick me up and get me back home.
What was the range on the P-47? How long
Well,
did you stay in the air?
it varied. If we carried a belly tank and 2 wing tanks, we could fly a mission 4 to 5 hours. When we went down to that long mission to France, in France there, to where we had the surrender, we spent a little bit too much time at the target and had to stop at an Allied strip on our way back to get some gas because it was over a 4-hour mission, and we couldn't carry bombs down there because of the distance we.
Right.
Severe.
Now you said that you did run a few escort missions,
Yes.
and you were escorting what type of planes?
B-26s primarily. We did have 1 or 2 earlier out of England for B-17s. I remember one of them we flew up through a heavy overcast and popped out above it, and we were probably 16, 17,000 feet already, and I suddenly realized that I had ice on the ends of my gun barrels, and I knew that it was all the way along the leading edge of the wings, and the airplane was a little mushy. but we stayed with the bombers until it was time for us to go back, and that ice stayed with us until we broke out of the overcast down below. So.
And these bombers are going into Germany, right? Their targets
That's correct.
Into the heart of Germany.
That's right. We were flying out of England.
And how far would you go with the bombers before you'd have to turn them back?
Well, I don't remember exactly how. It wasn't a great distance. We flew probably. Of course, it takes them a little time to get assembled, but we always had a a point someplace on their on their mission run to join them, and but we were probably. I would imagine. I don't know on that one whether we were carrying. I've got it in my logbook, but whether we were carrying 3 external tanks or just one big belly tank. But at any rate, we were with them. I would guess close to 2 hours each way.
Wouldn't the German fighters just wait until you guys fell back then before they would
Yeah, we didn't see any on that mission that day at all. I saw very few German fighters over there. In fact, I flew 71 missions, and a couple of times it was a group mission, and we had a fighter, one of the squadrons that was strafing the airfield, German airfield, and the 2 of them, and the third one was the top cover and would stay up there in case German fighters came in. In both cases, we were flying top cover and watched, and I never did see any German fighters in the air. They were all on the ground, but I didn't see any German fighters that were, well, the first one we shot at was in the Bulge. 26th of December, I shot one down, so that was the only one I ever pulled a trigger on.
Is that right?
Yeah. Saw one of their jets a time or two, but they were experimental and they wouldn't stop to combat us at all. They would fly into an overcast or zip off and leave us in the dust.
Yeah. Were the Germans at that point, as you moved into Germany, what about their flak artillery? Was there a lot of heavy flak?
Yes. We experienced a lot more 20 and 40 millimeter stuff, and even rifles, machine guns. But most of them were, when I'd come back, would have holes in the tail or something like that. I had a couple of times that I had holes in the wings, and then that one experience where I caught one right in the prop shank and took a chunk of the propeller about the big as my fist out and broke back into the engine and cut spark plug leads and oil lines and what have you. I didn't even know I'd been hit. It jolted me, but I'd been knocked around by 88 that felt a lot worse. I came back around. It was on a dive bomb run to strafe, and I was leading a 12-ship formation at that time, and my wingman called me as I came back around to make a strafing pass and told me I was on fire, and I looked back and all the oil was going under my wing, and I didn't realize it. Then I realized that I was getting some coating on my windscreen too. Took off for home.
So you flew 71 missions. So there was a lot of time that you weren't in the air.
Yes.
And what was that like? What was the routine, the daily routine, if you weren't flying a mission?
Oh, we did a lot of, not a lot, but occasionally we called it slow time if they had engine work on them, and then the crew chief would have us, not necessarily our airplane, but the engineering department would have an airplane that needed some slow time on it, a new engine put in, so we'd take that up, and then periodically we checked the water injection on them. We'd take them up 10,000 feet and give the water a shot, just a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, and make sure that it was operating properly. we never used a water injection unless it was an emergency and somebody was on our tail or something. And because I've forgotten how many minutes, I think 3 minutes or something like that total, you used it where you had an engine change because it was damaging to the engine.
Right.
But we had a pilot that made a mistake when we were training. Wasn't going to get off the runway, and he gave it a shot of water, thought it'd get him off of the runway. Well, it reacts differently. The minute he hit that water hit it, it slowed down first before it took off.
Right.
And he didn't have enough runway left and went off the end and killed him. But,
I suspect there was as many accidents from human error as there was from Germans actually shooting down our planes.
yeah. Then we had a few friendly fire issues too. We, occasionally intelligence wouldn't be up to date on the bomb line, tell us where the bomb line was, and the U.S. forces had moved forward at night, and occasionally they would be beyond our bomb line, and we would strafe or dive bomb them and find out it was friendly. But later in the war, they had ground panels, cerise colored mostly, and they'd put those out for us. And as soon as we saw those, I knew we were. Of course, during the bulge, the Germans had captured a lot of those in American uniforms and vehicles, and so we didn't know who was what
Right.
there. Yeah, it was a mess.
So I think the last place that you were flying from was Le Mans. Did you guys move to any other bases after that?
From Le Mans, we moved to Reims-Epernay. We had two different positions there, and then we moved up to Louvain, Belgium, which was 40 miles from Brussels, and we spent the winter there. We were there during the bulge. And then in the spring, after the first of the year in 45, we moved to Aachen, and there very shortly, and then moved down to Koblenz, Germany. And at Koblenz, they quit sending us bombs down there because they knew that there was something that we didn't, we were going to have to haul off. We just used our machine guns strafing.
It was getting pretty obvious at this point, in spring of 1945, that the Germans were on the run.
Yeah, it was. And then they moved us to Kassel, Germany, and that's where we were VE Day. That's up north of Frankfurt.
What was the deepest you flew into Germany? Did you fly as far as Berlin at any time?
No, no, we didn't. Actually, probably from Kassel there, we were hitting some of the German airfields in Germany, but we didn't fly very many missions out of there. And the war ended, and then we stayed there. When the war ended, and I had enough points to come home immediately, and that, unfortunately, that ruling, if they come home, if they had so many points, well, we had so many pilots that had served down in Puerto Rico.
All right.
And suddenly, our ground support, our ground people, and as well as pilots, all were high-numbered veterans were sent home, and suddenly we didn't have enough crew chiefs, and we didn't have enough skilled, mechanics and what have you. So we flew all of our P-47s to an assembly point, and they destroyed them there.
Wow.
And
literally destroyed all the planes.
The P-47s.
Yeah.
We had some L ships and little kites to get our flight time in, and off the record we started instructing the enlisted men and giving them flight lessons.
Back up for a minute. During the war, and the German pilots and their planes. What was your opinion about the German aircraft, and your opinion about the flying ability of the German pilots?
Well, like I said, over there we had just at the bulge there. There was about 20 109s that jumped 12 of us, and they were just looked up above as I came off of the target with my 4 ships, and the squadron leader was already above us, and I saw them up there, and there were just a bunch of specks. They weren't in formation or anything, and I called them into the leader, and he said, I got them, and he met them. They were coming down, just helter-skelter.
Yeah.
And I was getting my flight back in formation, and somebody called my flight number and said, Blue 4, there's one on your tail. And I looked back, and my 3 ships were in string getting back in formation. There wasn't anybody back there on his tail, and we hadn't encountered the Germans yet. And then they said, for God's sake, Blue 4, brake. And I looked back there and saw him take off to the right and down, and didn't see him until we got back to base, and he was there. He said he thought one was on his tail because the traces were going under him, and suddenly realized he was squeezing his own trigger to dodge it, and he was gone from us there, so he went on back to base. But the other 3 of us each shot down 1, and the squadron, the 12 ships, 11 that remained there, accounted for 9, and we lost 1. But it was obvious to us that the Battle of the Bulge, they had a few skilled pilots probably,
right.
And possibly had lower octane fuel.
Right. And one of the things Eisenhower had determined was that before we invaded the mainland, that we would have to have control of the skies.
Yeah.
And so, in your opinion, it appeared that we did have control of the skies.
Oh yes, definitely. That's known. I guess the fat boy that flew down in Spain, I guess he was catching heck from Hitler.
Yeah, Gary.
Gary, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was going to knock out England. He was going to do this. He was going to do that. I was just reading a book. I wasn't aware of it. The Germans had the atomic bomb under.
They were close to it.
Yes. Hitler was depending on that, didn't he?
So the point system is determining who comes back, and then evidently you did. You got enough points. I mean, but you didn't come back right away, did you?
No, I stayed over there because I was due for promotion.
Oh, okay.
I was squadron operations officer when the war ended, and I was a captain, and it called for a major, and I thought, well, I'll just hang around a little while until I get my promotion, and they sent a new commander in, and he brought 3 of his buddies in, and it was peacetime, you know. So anyway, he assigned me group ops instead of squadron ops, and that called for a lieutenant colonel. So I thought, well, that's all right, I'll take it. I had a master sergeant, 29 years, that was in operations, and he ran it anyway, so. And I was, that's what I was doing when I got, I had a friend, lieutenant in personnel, that kept me informed on what was going on in group headquarters, and he said, commander just sent in a list of guys for promotion. He said, you weren't on it. So I said, well, you got any leave time or leave missions to Switzerland? I'd sure like to go down there for a week. And he said, I'm working on one now. And he put me on it. I took off to Switzerland. I came back, and this major, West Pointer, that graduated, well, he was a year behind me. He was already a major. And he said, well, why didn't you tell me you were going to Switzerland? And I said, sir, you signed the orders. And he said, yeah, but I never look at them, you know. He wanted me to sign a form there to remain over there for another 6 months. And I said, no, I'd like to go home. So I took off. And I stayed in the reserve then. I was actually on active duty until 47. And when I was separated, I had 2 months, 2 full months of leave time coming, but I was advanced to major at the time I retired, as I discharged.
Right.
And then I received a promotion to lieutenant colonel in the reserve. I stayed in the reserve until 63.
So when you came home, when you came back to the States, where did you return to? Where did you go home?
I was sent from Camp Chaffee for separation. I signed up for an indefinite period or for 6 months or something. I got 45 days at home, and then I reported to San Antonio. Got down there, and they had about 1,000 of us, single-engine pilots they didn't know what to do with. And they gave us an option of where we wanted to go, and I said, well, I'd like to go out to Phoenix. That's where I graduated from flying school. They sent me there. I was there a month. Then they sent me up to Chinook Field. And I was there about a month, and I enrolled in some schools up there and what have you. And then they sent me back to San Antonio. And it was a personnel distribution center, training center at that time. And I was they told me, well, you can either be a supply officer or a physical training officer. And I said, well, I'd like to be outside. So I was physical training officer. About a month later, I was in a car wreck and broke a leg.
Oh.
And the last year, I was assigned to Brook General Hospital, and till my leg mended, and I was separated from there. The separation was in 47.
Did you, when you were discharged and you left your military career behind you, did you ever fly a plane again?
Oh yes, I had a brother-in-law who was had a flight school, and I took a few lessons in a little airplane and passed my commercial and instructor ratings, and did some instructing for him. In 1951, I finally let my license expire. I was either going to have to get a new wife or quit flying, one or the other, because I was spending my weekends and my mornings before I went to work out there instructing him.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to say, or anything about your time in the service?
No, I'm fortunate. It, I was scared to death to land an airplane when I first started flying in primary. I had more problems landing that airplane than anything else. I think it was only my pride that kept me from washing out, because I'd get close to the ground, I'd start tensing up. And we had civilian instructors, and he was a very patient man. And I got a good start. I told him I was afraid that I was going to be passed through there when I wasn't capable